Riverside with Eye of the Soundscape. Now, like the album itself, this is going to be a bit of an unconventional review. I'm really not planning on giving this album a score. It's more of a recommendation or non-recommendation type thing. This album is a bit of a compilation, but also isn't a compilation. You see, Piotr, who was the band's guitar player, who tragically passed away earlier this year, had always wanted to do an album that did a little bit more in the way of ambience, one that was a little bit more geared toward that side of the spectrum. Some may immediately think of groups such as Kraftwerk whenever it comes to some of the things you would expect from an ambient album, or from one that has a little bit more of an electronic signature to it. But Piotr, this is something that he and the band always wanted to accomplish, and had started to do some musings such as this throughout their career, ever since 2007. So this disc is a bit of a compilation of some of that work, while also completing the process and also adding 4 new songs. So you have some things that have already been released off of albums such as Rapid Eye Movement as B-sides, or Deluxe Edition, Little Diddlings, Love, Fear, and the Time Machine, as well as even Second Life Syndrome, Shrine of New Generation Slaves also being in there as well. This is also an album whose runtime may seem a bit harrowing. 102 minutes is definitely not what you would consider to be conventional. However, if you are a fan of prog, if you are a fan of Riverside, if you're a fan of longer structures within sound, and if you enjoy the ambient side of music, something that feels a little bit more chilled out or background noise-like. If you enjoyed, for example, The Endless River by Pink Floyd just a few short years ago, then this album will really set up kind of nicely in your wheelhouse. The second reason why this is going to be unconventional is because this is an album that is more so about what it makes you feel, as opposed to what the lyricism may cause you to experience, or any sort of story that might be behind it. The story really is 100% within the setup as to why it exists. A little bit ago we got Where the River Flows, which is the first track off of this album. This 2-disc set starts off with its opening disc, having mainly tracks that are able to eclipse the 10-minute mark in runtime. There's at least 4 of them that do this. And based off of that, Where the River Flows, which is a new track, and along with the second song, which is entitled Shine, you get a bit of a contrast of style, with Where the River Flows being a little bit more slow, a little bit more brooding, gathering emotion as the composition slowly expands itself further until the last couple of moments the heart literally nearly gets ripped out of you. This is the first time that you're going to feel a little bit emotional, considering this is really the last time that you're ever going to hear that emotive guitar work that Piotr was able to really give to Riverside, considering they are planning to continue on without him, bringing in session musicians as guitarists, as opposed to finding somebody to be a full-time replacement. They are now going to continue as a trio. This is almost a song that could have just as easily been the very final cut off of disc 1, or even just the final cut in general of this 2-disc set, considering the way it builds and concludes almost has a little shred of finality to it, with Shine, a 4-minute track that follows it, echoing a little bit more positivity. This almost feels like it would be a better suited opener. Either that, or something that's sort of right in the middle. But instead what you get off of the first, or the last couple of cuts off of disc 1, which is Rapid Eye Movement, the 2016 mix, Night Session Part 1 and Part 2, is some of the older work that has been previously described as being sort of done for this idea. And you have to really enjoy what some of these things accomplish. The way in which the compositions very slowly build, and how the relaxed nature of them gives them a lot of their charm, especially with Rapid Eye Movement. Hearing some of those noises that almost sound like a resuscitation machine that gradually become part of this composition really do give it a lot of charm. And at 12 minutes and 40 seconds, this longest cut off of the disc also presents really the sort of eye of what this project is all about, and does actually grant some of the earliest notions of this real, concept coming into being. And it's definitely something that shows that the 2016 mix of this has added some of the charm and some of the technological boosts of the past 8 years to really give it an extra little kick in the ass, an extra oomph. It kind of makes those emotions bleed out with a little bit more character and a little bit more motion. Whenever you get to the second disc, you get a lot of stuff that was included in the day sessions of Love, Fear, and the Time Machine, with some of these tracks feeling as though they had systematic themes that were sort of discovered as they went along, with the tracks such as Machines having sort of that feel to it. And really that's also where you get some of those Kraftwerk notions, and that could even be made true of a song such as Aether. But I'm going to immediately go to the very final two songs off of this album, Promise and Eye of the Soundscape. I'm sorry if those of you wanted me to talk about Heavenland, which was a really strong song that has some really cool curiosities to it, and compositionally feels a little bit different than everything else. There's sort of a, real balance beam work that's being done here between everything sounding like it has a bit of a morose or a bit of a sorrowful, mournful melancholy that's draped within it, and some a little bit more accessible, a little bit more mid-tempo, almost joyous, or at least, curious sounds to it. But with Promise and with Eye of the Soundscape, you get your heart ripped out once again. Sleepwalkers, by the way, the first cut off of this too, is also another new song, for those of you who are wondering. But Promises is a very short song. It almost feels like some sort of interlude. It feels like it's one that was meant to be maybe a piece that connected to other ideas if it were to be used for Love, Fear, and the Time Machine. But instead, this piece sets up Eye of the Soundscape almost beautifully, because this final song at 11 minutes and 30 seconds in length, its slow build, very similar to Where the River Flows, definitely grants it sort of that last gasp of air. And similar to Where the River Flows, it feels like a last gasp of air, the last time that those real powerful and real moody registers, those bars that you're going to hear out of Piotr's guitar, are going to be strung. And even though this is a new track, even though this is one that's really taking a lot of concept, etc., it just rings with that power that gives Riverside such an edge whenever it is compared to other progressive rock, or some might even say progressive metal bands that are on the market today. Each one of those groups aims to really connect with the listener in more ways than just with lyricism. They also want their instrumentation, their composition, to really be part of that speaking mechanism, that sort of voice that gives them the power to really form a bond with the audience. However, with songs like this, the emotion, and really with songs such as most of Riverside's past discography, they always seem to be a cut above whenever it came to sort of touching you in those ways that really made it feel special and made those emotions that you felt feel real, as opposed to just, emotions that exist within the confines of an album. Eye of the Soundscape shows that, and Eye of the Soundscape once again rips your heart out, and because it's a finality, it's the end, it all becomes real whenever this song ends. It all becomes final whenever the song ends, and that's whenever the emotion does start to flow. It may not be the same style as you may have experienced with Where the River Flows or any of the other cuts off of this album, but for Riverside fans, this is almost like saying goodbye all over again. And this time, instead of it just merely being the shock of waking up and learning the news, there is a soundtrack that really is sort of behind you in the process. And music has the ability to move you in different ways. It has the ability to elevate or destroy different events. It's something where a song coming on to a stereo during a critical moment could be seen or deemed as inappropriate. No, this instead feels very moving, very appropriate, with a lot of tracks, including Heavenland prior to this, feeling like a fitting send-off of Piotr and welcoming him into the next life. As I said, I really wasn't aiming to give this a conventional rating, because this is not a conventional album. Some may say that this is merely for the hardcore fans of the Riverside fan base. And while I would agree, considering the harrowing runtime does give it a lot of sort of fear to some people, it's a lot to digest, and it's one that has very carefully articulated motion, one that is not necessarily going to go too many places, but in itself kind of does. It's definitely not one for those who are just casual fans. This is definitely for the Riverside diehards. But it's also an album that I highly recommend to those who just simply enjoy music of a little bit more of a minimalist variety. Either that or those who do enjoy ambience or enjoy, very soft elements from prog rock. It will give you those things, and it will give you a lot more. As you learn the story, and as you hear these notes really echo as they are strung, it will start to make that story come to life. It may actually go on and surprise more people, and actually lead them to become fans of the band. That might be a stretch of a statement, but I wouldn't be surprised if for at least a couple of people that ended up being true. What did you guys think about Eye of the Soundscape? Let me know in the comments below. My name is coverkillernation. Piotr, we still and always will miss you. Riverside, thank you for this. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.